Hello, welcome back to Accidental. I'm Gillian and this is Richard, and we are going to be talking a bit more about Accidental. So today we thought we would talk a bit about how Accidental started and how we've got to where we are. Richard, you are one of the co-founders.
Yeah.
Original Accidental.
Yeah.
OG AT, right?
Yeah, I'm the only one left.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what that says, but we'll leave it at that.
I think they're not dead.
They're not dead. No, well, maybe that's the answer to the question. The question being, OG's Accidental and where we come from and all that kind of razzmatazz. We don't often talk about the co-founders and kind of things, but
shadowy figures in the background.
Yeah, well, Gail Dennison and Rebecca Hampson also founded Accidental back when we were all in university together. We founded it as most new companies tend to be founded, which is a classics company with new writing, which most university companies coming out tend to be, is that the students want to do classical pieces and also they want to do new writing.
Yeah.
So no one chooses. But eventually we became a new writing company only, but that's how we started.
So that was at Queen's?
That was at Queen's in Belfast, and that's because Gail and Rebecca wanted to do classics, and I wanted to only do new writing. So that's what we kind of found. It was interesting because I never wanted to start a company, but Gail and Rebecca came to me to ask what I thought of where they should get started, because I was a slightly more mature student than they, so I had a little bit of a different perspective. And in that conversation then, I kind of thought, because my original plan was to leave Northern Ireland after university and go off and be a jobbing director in England for a while. But because we started Accidental, it kind of actually kept me here a bit longer. I did eventually leave, and as soon as I finished training, I actually just came back to keep Accidental going. And Emily was the artistic director whilst I was away, because by that stage Rebecca and Gail had actually gone away. So Rebecca moved back to England, and Gail eventually emigrated to Australia. So I think she's in
really
Melbourne
far
at the
away.
moment. So hi Gail, if you're still watching, and Rebecca, of course. They've both gone off to other things, whereas I kind of kept it going, and it's evolved in several different forms since then. So yeah, that's the original, the trio who started it. Emily joined a little bit later, around about 2009, I think, might be slightly earlier than that, because when Gail and Rebecca left and the new writing became what we were. Because our first play was No Exit by Sartre, and then the second play was a new play by Darren McCann called Confession. So it was that kind of, they were within a month of each other, so it was that kind of dichotomy between classics and new writing. Emily came in. I asked her to come in because she was a friend from Queen's as well, and really very, very, very talented at writing and literature and dramaturgy. And so we asked her to come in as a dramaturg, and we started a whole series of readings, essentially, because one of the things we wanted to do was get better at working with writers, get better at knowing writers, get better at working with new scripts. So the way to do that was to just say, anyone wants to submit a script, we'll read it, we'll give feedback, and we'll do readings with it. So we started a whole series of readings up in, I think, the first Blick studios in Belfast, up on Malone Road. And we did a series of 6 readings in 6 months called VI 6. And then that became the Biscuit Tin readings, which we then started to do in the Ulster Hall over a couple of years, again with slightly less readings, still quite a lot and still one a month, but we then did a series called the Biscuit Tin readings with 3 or 4 readings per month for over a couple of years. When I was away and Emily was here, and then we came back, and all that kind of things. All the hidden history that we never talk about now, because it's, we're building now.
I was going to ask about the building. So obviously we've had this building for 5.5 years. Yeah,
2017 February. Around about this time, strangely enough, at the end of February in 2017 is when we moved into it.
Right. Okay.
So literally, I think this technically is maybe the anniversary. Okay. It might be actually today or last week. It might be the anniversary of when we actually moved in.
Because your first show was in June, because it was the weekend that I moved to Northern Ireland.
Yes and no, because when we first moved in, we moved in slightly early to help Tinderbox. So Tinderbox were doing a program at that stage called Convergence, and I was helping produce it, but we lost the space that we were meant to use for that project, and I had already negotiated the space for Accidental at the same time, so we came in and used this space early. So all the Convergence guys was the first show. Tinderbox Convergence was a large amount of different actors from lots of different backgrounds and lots of community events. So, and that was done in a building where it wasn't transformed; it was just still a bank.
Yeah.
So the banking hall was there still. I think we managed to rip out maybe the tables. Yeah, there was a bit of annoyance, I think, from the actors about having to rip things out, and we ripped out all the old tables and stuff like that in the banking hall upstairs, which is just above us in the theatre, what is now the theatre, but the place was still, very much had been abandoned for 10 years, was awful. I had to, I think I paid a very large amount of money to get the plumbing working in time. Like, I think it was to get the plumbing on, it was about £6,500 just to get the plumbing on in time for the Tinderbox Convergence thing.
Wow.
Because at that stage, the plumbing didn't work. I think there was pipes missing, whatever was the reason, but it was a hefty wee price. I think we had a week, maybe a week and a half, to get the building up to a certain level for an audience. But yeah, it was touch and go.
And you were resident in another building before this.
Yeah. We'd done several different building takeovers. This is the longest and the largest. The first was in 2012. We took over a old office on Upper Queen Street as our office and rehearsal space. And that was the first kind of thing that, because of the rate relief scheme, it allowed us to take over buildings and give the landlords rate relief for that they would normally pay on unused property or just any property that they own. Which was a fantastic scheme. It allowed us to have our first office, use it as a rehearsal space. Places we could never afford. Rehearsal space at that stage, and even now, is quite expensive, especially when you need to use it for 4 weeks, 5 weeks, or whatever it is. Let alone office space. So without that scheme, we would never have had an office. We would still be working out of coffee shops, I think. So I don't know what Accidental would have been without that scheme, but it kind of taught us a lot about taking over buildings, recovering them, and then we had that office, and then eventually we took over the office beside it, and also the old Bradbury Graphics underneath it. That building's now gone. This is entirely gone. So lucky that we moved out. We then took over another building on Wellington. Oh, it's above Maiden Belfast. I can't remember. It's not Wellington Place, but it's right there. On the 4th floor, and we turned that into a place for a show called the Lost Martini, and then we kept on using it as a space for artists to come and experiment, and that's where we actually started doing live streaming for the first time as well as part of our online stuff that we do now. So yeah, it was a lot of different things, and then we moved out of there in 2016 when the landlord didn't like some of the things we'd done to the building, I think, or to the floor. I think because there were lots of things wrong with the floor, and it was quite in a bad condition, and we took some of the things that were about to fall down, and then they came and blamed some of that on us. Yes, take over buildings at your own peril. And then 2017, Emily, Teresa, and myself, who were Accidental at that stage, kind of said, well, shall we just cut our losses and just Accidental will go away and we'll all go off. I had just been living outside Northern Ireland for a while, and we kind of thought, okay, we'll do something big, or that may fail, and if so, then we'll that's it. So it's a kind of go big or go home kind of thing became the building that we're in now.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you've never looked back?
Yeah, just about. Certainly, when we first came in, it was ourselves and Amadan who kind of converted the building. We did a lot of work with Gemma and David. It was a massive, huge amount of work. And the first 9 months were all under the building as free under the rate relief scheme again. But if we were going to continue in the building, I kind of knew that we'd have to start paying a rent. Otherwise, like the other spaces, we just get kicked out and the building would be demolished for whatever or sold into a property developer. So we started paying rent after the first 9 months after we proved that the building could pay its own way, and because we wouldn't have been able to do it with Arts Council grants. There were none available for us to take over a big building. the building had to be self-sustainable, and that's what we put a lot of time into, trying to make sure that the building is self-sustainable. And then, yeah, we had a couple of years, and then the pandemic, and we survived that. And we're still here, still self-generating its own income. We've got a small team behind the scenes. Even right now, we've got our nearly our whole team in this small room as we sit here. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it's changed a lot in lots of ways. Like lots of different people coming and going, and apart from you.
Yeah, unfortunately, apart from me. But I've put a focus in the last couple of years when you came in, and Tommy and Emma and Marty, where I stepped back quite a bit and just said, work it out. Not quite. It's not quite as bad as that, but a lot of it is very much like I put yourselves a little bit more forefront, so that if I die tomorrow in a car accident or something, that the building might actually not just disappear. That might be someone there to help.
Are we in your accidental will?
Well, no, because the board will sort that out.
Oh, okay.
But it's nice to know that the team members there's more support, because for a long time it was just me keeping the building going, and Gemma and David and Emily were here as well, really putting in a huge amount of work. But administratively, a lot of it fell down to me with bookings and things like that. So it kind of, coming out of the pandemic, I kind of put a bigger focus on the team being more resilient to make sure that it's not just me.
Good. So we've got to this point. What's next?
It's interesting because over last year we tried to just rebuild a bit coming out of the pandemic, and that was quite tricky. And we're now getting to the stage where we're not rebuilding anymore. We're now building. So we've recovered maybe 70% of the audience we had beforehand, maybe 60% of the program. So there's before the pandemic, we would have had a lot of internal events, and now there's a lot more focus on this year on our own internal events coming back. Some of the things that we've done in the past, like Scratch, and new things like Culture Nights with Iranian Night, and with handmade music now coming in and things like that, and Cosmic Jam. So I think 2023 is building off the fact that we've survived. We're still here, and then we'll have a lot more exciting things to come. So stay tuned.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Richard.
Thanks, Gillian.
Very interesting delve back in through the years.
Yeah, we'll see if people find it interesting. Hearing about the hidden things, because when we set up the building, we wiped a lot of our stuff off our own website because it became something else. So a lot of this stuff is now hidden a wee bit.
Yeah. Great. Well, lovely to hear about it, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks very much. All the best.